another video. In this video, we are going to start yet another mini series, but this one we're going to work on hacking GCP or Google Cloud Platform. Now, if you know anything about all of the cloud stuff, there's kind of three kings in the cloud space. You have AWS, which is the most popular one, which, by the way, I made a course on that. In just a minute, I'll show that to you. There's Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform, and then there's GCP or Google Cloud Platform. There's a lot of resources online and videos, I think, that cover AWS and Azure, but not as many that cover GCP. But let me be very clear and realistic with you. I am far from a GCP expert. I do a little bit of GCP pen testing, but not a whole lot of it, and I'm always learning new things as we dive into it. So as I work through this challenge machine over on PwnedLabs, which is sort of like hack the box for the cloud, I will get stuck. I will make silly mistakes. I will stumble around, and I will also try to keep most of that in this video so you can see the full learning process. Additionally, you might see we have chat right up here. Hey, you should join the live studio audience. I am making this standalone video for YouTube while I'm live streaming. If you want to catch when I live stream over on YouTube, when you subscribe, hit the little notification bell thingy and you'll get notified when I go live, and you can be part of the live studio audience. Now, before we dive into it, I do have to share with you a word from our sponsor. This guy told me that if I don't share his videos, he's not going to let me make videos anymore. So real quick, let me give you a word from our sponsor, and then we'll dive into some GCP hacking. To succeed as a pen tester in 2025 and beyond, you need to understand cloud pen testing. I created an entire course, Introduction to AWS Pentesting, which is 65 hands-on lessons taught by me, a real pen tester, not just a silly InfoSec influencer. This course is available right now for only $34.99. I could have easily charged hundreds of dollars for this course, but I wanted it to be affordable and accessible. Link is in the description. There you go. That price will be going up to $49.99 soon, so I recommend you buy it now, even if you're not going to go through it right now. It's $34.99, and here's my commitment to you. If you purchase my course and wait even a year to go through it and you decide that was not worth the money, seriously, DM me on Discord. I will personally refund you out of my own pocket. That's how much I believe in the quality and content of the course that I have made. That being said, let's go ahead and dive into this GCP lab together over here on PwnedLabs. So I launched the lab, I'm on the VPN, and we are given an IP address for an entry point. Now, if you've never used PwnedLabs, one of the cool things about PwnedLabs is there's actually a detailed walkthrough. So not if, but when we get stuck, we'll be able to look at the walkthrough. But what I like to do with this, especially for cloud environments that I'm unfamiliar with, is I like to take it from the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes here on these labs kind of give us an idea of what we are going to dive into. So we can look at this together, and maybe if I can zoom in, there we go. So here's what we're going to work on in this lab. We're going to leverage SQL injection to gain command execution. We're going to identify service account creds and instance metadata. We're going to identify dangerous GCP permissions. We're going to gain situational awareness using cloud asset inventory. We're going to create HMAC keys to move laterally. And finally, we're going to leverage predictable GCP bucket naming conventions, or I should say, we are going to attempt to do all of that, not in this one video. Like I said before, this is going to be a series of multiple videos so that we can take it slow and explain stuff. Now, if while I'm reading through this, any of this makes no sense to you, that's okay. I encourage you to hang around. I'm going to do my best to explain everything that is unfamiliar, and honestly, we will learn this together. But as you all know, the most important thing to do when you're learning or even doing a pen test is getting your notes ready. So let's begin with that by getting our notes ready. I'm going to zoom out right here. We'll also keep my eye on chat. Do I have a course on OT hacking? I do not yet. But let's get our notes ready. So I'm going to jump over to my notes, which is Notion right here is what I like to use for notes. I don't know why I can't edit the page. There we go. Oh. Okay, I can type here, but I can't edit the title. Oh, now I can. Okay, I'm just going to call this Exfiltrate GCP Creds. I don't actually, what's the actual lab called? Let me just grab the name of the lab. Here it is. Via Exfiltrate GCP via WebApp Exploitation. So I'm just going to call my lab that. There we go. And let's just begin by structuring our notes. So I'm going to do an H1. Maybe. Geez, I'm struggling. Notion's like lagging for me. Let's go ahead and do a scope, and let's grab the scope information from this. So what is our scope? Our team, we'll just call ourselves Hack Smarter Security, has landed a new engagement. The global retailer client has provided us with a list of IP addresses mapped to their deployed prod and dev applications. These applications are currently accessible from any of their 200 store locations. You are currently assessing this IP. In scope is the application and any other resources and environments owned by the client that you are able to access. LinkedIn user said, hey, Tyler, hey, hello to you. I apologize. Sometimes LinkedIn and Restream don't get along, so I can't see your username, but it is good to have you here. Let's grab our scope information and add that information to our notes. I'm going to just do a control. Whoa, that was weird. Maybe if I do a code block, it won't look as bad. Nope, it still looks bad. Whatever, we'll just go with it. We have the information there. And of course, we're beginning with this IP address, so we'll want to just drop the IP address right there. Finally, remember we have these learning outcomes. So I'm going to kind of use these learning outcomes to structure my notes. I'm just going to paste those in like so. I didn't mean to do a code block, but that will be fine. We'll keep that up above. But we're going to do an H1, and we know our first objective is to leverage SQL injection to gain command execution. Now, the reason I do H1s and H2s and all this craziness is here in Notion, we can do a table of contents. And then that will quickly structure our notes as we work through this. So we'll be able to look at our notes at the top once we add more information and see everything that we have covered. I think it's important to do that because many of these labs aren't meant to be accomplished in one sitting. Seriously. The goal when you go through a lab, whether it's PwnedLabs or TryHackMe or Hack the Box or Hacking Hub, whatever you name your platform, the goal is not to complete it as quick as you can. The goal is to learn something in the process. And when you rush your way through the lab, you're going to short circuit your learning. So take your time. Fall into rabbit holes. That's okay. Rabbit holes are only bad if you don't learn something in the process. Read up about different technologies. If you uncover a term that's unfamiliar, take the time to understand that term. That is the best way to learn, and make sure you take good notes while you're doing that. So here we go. Our first goal is to leverage SQL injection to gain command execution. So what should we begin with? Well, we have an IP address that's like the web server. Maybe it has some other things on there as well. So let's begin by doing a classic Nmap scan and seeing what ports are open. I'm going to go ahead and grab this IP right here. And first, let's make sure my VPN that I'm on actually works. Oh, no. Come on, VPN. I believe in you. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on the VPN. Maybe. Can I ping it? Oh, there we go. All right. So I can't ping it, possibly due to a firewall or something on their end, but I am able to curl it. So it does seem to be open on port 80, which is fine. Let's go ahead and use Rust scan. We can still scan all the ports, pass it over to Nmap, and see what things might be listening. So let's do that. You can just use Nmap for this, but Rust scan, I think, makes the syntax a little bit easier for those of you who might be newer to CTFs or learning our labs like this. So with Rust scan, and I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys, we can do Rust scan -A. I'm going to drop in the IP, and then we're going to do this, and I'll explain what this is doing right here. Oh, I didn't mean to do that by scrolling. Our first part of our command is saying, hey, Rust scan, I want you to scan this IP for all ports, not just the top 1,000 most common, but all 65,000 plus ports. And then whatever open ports you find, I want you to take those open ports and I want you to pass it over to Nmap. And with Nmap, I want you to run the -A flag against every open port. If you know your Nmap flags, you know that -A means, hey, I want you to throw all the enumeration scripts at it and let's see what is running on these ports so we can do a little bit better enumeration. Right away, we can see that we have port 80 running, and I don't know if that's going to be the only port. I'm going to let Rust scan continue to run, and I'm going to rename my tab Rust scan, but I'm going to speed up the process a little bit by also doing an Nmap scan just on that port. So I'm going to do Nmap -P80 -A to run all those enumeration scripts, -PN to ignore host discovery. Don't do ping because ping might fail. Just ignore host discovery. We know the host is up. We know this port is alive. And -V for verbose mode because I'm impatient and I want to see the output right away from Nmap. So we'll hit enter on that and it's going to start scanning. Now, one thing we can see right away is this is hosted with some Google GCP stuff. We have this IP and then Google user content. We'll let that scan continue to run, and while it runs, let's jump back over to our notes, maybe if I can click the right one, and start adding some details. So I'm doing H2, and we'll just call this enumeration. Actually, we'll do an H2 and we'll call it Nmap scan. And I'm going to do a code block. In Notion, you can do a code block with 3 backticks. 1, 2, 3, and we'll drop our Nmap results in right there. We have our code block there. We can also, let me jump over to this. Is this still running? And it's done. So we can grab this information and analyze it a little bit together. I'm going to grab this, jump over to my notes. What up, Euler? Good to have you here, my friend. But we drop this in here, and this is what we're working with. Now, we'll continue to let Rust scan run, but we can begin working with what we have here. And there's a few things that are interesting, out of the ordinary. If we were doing a pen test, we already have a few findings. Finding number 1 is version enumeration. When you're doing a pen test, or even if you have your own web server, you don't want your web server to disclose the version information, even if it's not yet vulnerable. If we were doing a pen test, we would report this to a client as an informational or a low finding and say, hey, you don't want to expose this. So that would be a finding if you were doing an actual pen test on this web app. Additionally, we can mark that down as something to research. So what I like to do is we'll make a to-do list based on our Nmap scan. So I'm going to do an H3. And we'll say, well, actually, I won't do an H3. I'm just going to do a to-do list like this. Actually, someone on chat a while ago showed me that Notion can do to-do lists automatically. So let's do that. I'm going to do / I think it's just to-do list. Yes. And we can create a to-do list right here. So let's research Apache 2.4.62. That'll be something we want to do. We have this interesting HTTP ls or list functionality, and we have an inventory. So we're, of course, going to want to check out the inventory directory. That's going to be something helpful to do. And we'll also say run dir search against the web app. vhosts aren't going to be super helpful right now because we don't even know the name of this web server, but we'll check it out. We'll keep that in mind if we want to come back to it. And we'll also just say enumerate the web app itself, i.e. check functionality. So let's go ahead and dive into a few of these things. One, by beginning by researching Apache 2.4.62. Now, we do know that we need to leverage SQL injection, so this probably is not going to be the way in, but I do want to show you proper methodology. If you're studying for an exam like the OSCP, I recommend making a to-do list before you dive into everything on the exam. The reason for that is OffSec is notorious for throwing rabbit holes at you. And when I did the OSCP, I was able to pass it on my first attempt in 8 hours. I only remember that because I made a whole video called How I Passed the OSCP in 8 hours on my first attempt or something silly like that. You can find it on my YouTube channel from a few years ago. But anyways, one big thing that I did is every time I discovered a port like 80, I would make a to-do list before I started enumerating. Because when you fall into a rabbit hole, you'll begin to fry your brain and you'll miss obvious things. So then if you make a to-do list before you begin diving in, then when you get stuck, you can say, okay, let me go back to my to-do list. Let me check out the things I forgot to check, and you keep working your way down the to-do list. Hey, Dollar Boy, this is actually over from PwnedLabs. It's a GCP lab from PwnedLabs. But let me go ahead and grab Apache 2.4.62. And here's the lab if anyone wants to follow along over here on PwnedLabs. I'll drop the link in chat for those of you in the live stream. I do think this is a premium lab, so you would need a PwnedLabs sub to get it. But as I shared before, purchase my Intro to AWS Pentesting course, and at the end of the course, you get 25% off PwnedLabs as a thank you to you for going through the course. Anyways, let's just look at this. What exploits are available for Apache 2.4.62? We can grab any of these. Hey, Henry checking in from the Knowledge Physics Lab from DC. Super good to have you hanging out here. So when we look at this, we see 0 vulnerabilities. So that's likely not going to be the way in, but as I shared before, it's always worth checking that. We can go ahead and mark that off the list. Not going to be useful to us. Now we can check out the inventory directory on the actual web app. And what I'm going to do is use Kaido for this enumeration. Now, if you've never heard of Kaido, it's a web proxy auditing tool built from the ground up in Rust, sort of like Burp Suite, but much more affordable and easier, I think, to use than Burp Suite Community Edition. I'm going to create a new project, and we'll just call this Hacking GCP, and I'm going to do create on that. We'll go over to Intercept, and I'm going to open up the built-in browser. Otherwise, I always forget to turn off Foxy Proxy if I use Firefox. Let me close this extra window right there. And let's just check out this web server itself. We'll drop back over to this because I don't remember the IP that I'm working with. It is right there. And maybe if I could tab to the right one, we'll do HTTP, paste it in. So that's interesting. Right away, we just have directory listing on inventory. So if we click into inventory, what do we have? Okay, then when we click into inventory, we are met with the login screen. Let's go ahead and grab that for our notes. I like to use Flameshot for taking screenshots. So I'm gonna grab Flameshot. I like to include the full URL right there, and then we have our please login. So I'm gonna copy that, jump back over to my notes, and we're gonna do an H3. Well, actually maybe, H3, and we will say enumerating the inventory directory. Drop a screenshot there showing that the inventory directory is a login. We, of course, don't need the screenshot to be that big at all. I'm going to make that much smaller and then drop it over there for our enumeration. So we checked out the inventory directory. I'm going to mark that. And I'm going to make another to-do list underneath this one because we now have a login form. And when you have a login form, there's always a few different things that you're going to want to check. So let me do another to-do list. And here are a few things that come to mind for me. Number one, we can check for SQL injection. We know that's a possibility. We can also check for no SQL injection. We can also check for common username, password combinations. We can check for username enumeration. If this is a real pen test, we could also check for rate limiting to see if brute force attacks are possible, but I think that will give us a good start. But before we go down to this to-do list, let's just have a good methodology and continue walking through the to-do list that we have created. So after checking out the inventory directory, you want to run dir search against the web app. And just because of how the web app's designed, I'm going to just do it against the inventory directory right away. If that doesn't find anything, we can back up. But I'm going to copy this, go over to this. Is Rust scan done, by the way? Rust scanned bugged out. It found port 80, but then it couldn't scan it. So interesting. Nmap worked. That's why it's always good to know how to do something in multiple different ways. Let me also make a directory for this. I'm just going to call this hacking GCP. I know that's not the name of the lab, but that's going to work for me. Let's get dir search kicked off. We'll do dir search -u for our URL, and I can paste it in like so. The default word list in dir search is what I like to begin with, so we'll just hit enter on our keyboard, and we can use that default word list. We can see a bunch of 403s, so you know what we can do with the 403s? Let me Control C. We can do -x, and we'll say ignore these. We don't need to fill it up. We can ignore 403s. We know we're not going to be able to access those. So we'll ignore the 403 HTTP error code, and we'll go ahead and let this thing do its thing. Right away, we see inventory admin, redirects to that. Oh, so that's interesting. It looks like we have, okay, a few different things already. We'll let it finish, but what already stands out to me, and I'm guessing it stands out to you as well, here on the inventory directory, we have a backup.sql file. Now, I don't want to pretend all of you know what that is, but SQL is for databases, structure, query, language. And occasionally you might see a SQL file or a backup SQL file being hosted somewhere. Now I will say, in all of my pen testing I've done, I don't think I've ever seen just a backup.sql file doing a dir search, but I'll tell you what I have seen before. I have, just by doing a dir search like this on a public-facing website during a pen test, I actually found GitHub credentials that allowed me to log into their private GitHub instance and essentially steal all their source code. I didn't really steal it because I was doing a pen test. So you never know what you might find when you do a dir search against a web app. But we have all of these. Let's grab these and add those to our notes. I think I'm going to do a new H2. And we'll say dir search right there. And we have that information there. And what stands out to me is that backup SQL file. So I know I'm jumping around a little bit here. We can mark off run dir search, and enumerating the web app itself, we sort of did that. We know that we have that main page that brings us to the inventory, and the inventory just brings us to a login. Euler said, the methodology I follow is to look at clearly exposed pages first to prevent blocking. When working, do you brute force directories first before attempting logins? It all depends on the scope of the web app. I often set up dir search in the background as I work. In a typical pen test, the client will actually allow list your IP, so you don't have to worry about blocking. And the reason for that is blocks are easy to work around. Matter of fact, if you go to Network Chuck's channel and you search for my name, I made a video with Network Chuck. He made a bunch of websites, and like I tried to hack 24 of his websites or some, clickbaity thing like that. But I don't remember if this is shown in the video. I actually don't know if it shows it. But one issue I had is his websites kept blocking me when I was enumerating them. But I was able to bypass that because I just used a VPN, and every time I got blocked, I just changed my IP, and I was able to bypass his little blocking he was doing to me. So there's ways to bypass that. Hopefully that answers your question. Anyways, let's see what the heck this inventory/backup SQL file is. We'll just jump out over to here and go to that directory. It actually downloads a file. All right. Let's go ahead and CP for my downloads, and we'll grab that backup SQL, and I'm going to copy it to my current working directory with the dot. Hit enter. I feel so confident watching Tyler Ipsec. When I try my own, I feel totally clueless. This is a journey for sure. Thank you. It's all about slowing down. I feel clueless half the time as well. I still get stuck on like an easy hack the box machine all of the time. Can you share your notes? I cannot share my notes. All right, LS, take your own notes. You'll learn better that way. We have the backup.sql file. Let's see what the heck is in this. Okay. It seems to actually be a table for their sales. Right away, we have this, which is a common SQL statement to create users. You can see what it's doing right here. It's saying insert into the user table, user ID, username, password, and access. And then it gives us our values. We have our user ID of 1, username of admin, and our password. Now, if you're new to pen testing or doing CTFs, this isn't a clear text password, and passwords aren't normally stored in clear text. By clear text, I mean non-encrypted. This password is hashed, but there's tools that we can use, such as Hashcat, to potentially reverse the hash and figure out what the password is with rainbow tables and all that fun stuff. I'm not going to go into detail right now on how all of that works, but just let it be known that if the password itself is weak, we're able to reverse the hash or crack the hash. Technically, you can't reverse a hash, but crack the hash in order to get the password. So we have an admin, user, and supplier. I'm going to grab this and add it to my notes. And we'll just say in the backup.sql file, we found some creds for the web app, but the passwords are hashed. Well, we can drop that information in right there, and I'm going to very quickly just grab each one of these hashes and pull them out so we have them separate. You could use like cut and stuff to do this as well, but because there's only 3 hashes, I'm just going to do it the nice, easy way, and we'll copy those out. I've been getting stuck on the privilege escalation parts and try hacking these easy boxes, but that's to be expected. I've only been learning hacking for about a month now. It is to be expected. It's all about muscle memory, making a good checklist as you work your way through stuff. What up, Cyberstorm? Over on Twitch. Good to have you here. But let's grab those hashes. I'm going to do nano, and we'll call it hashes.txt, and I'm going to paste in all those hashes into a file. I'm going to do Control X and then Y to save my hashes. And now, like I said before, Hashcat is a good tool to try to crack these hashes. We're going to run that against it. We'll just go ahead and type Hashcat, hashes.txt, and then we need to specify a word list. Now, kind of your default word list when doing CTFs or labs is the rocku.txt word list. It goes back to a breach of the rocku. I don't know if it was a music service or a social media service where their passwords were not encrypted and it got leaked, and that's where the rocku.txt word list comes from. We'll do user share word list rocku.txt. That's just the default location on Kali Linux for that word list, and I'll go ahead and hit enter on my keyboard, and let's see if we are able to crack some hashes. Now you can see what Hashcat tries to do at first. It tries to auto-identify the hash type, but it failed. But it gave us some suggestions of the hash types, MD4, MD5, MD5, blah, blah. We can first try MD4, although I think these are actually MD5, but let's go ahead and try it. We'll jump to the beginning, and I'm gonna do -M for the hash type, and we'll do 900, and we'll see if that works. Luke says, I've been studying nightly for at least a few hours a night. Honestly, I've been getting maybe 6 hours of sleep for almost 2 months now. Sleep's important, though. Make sure you get some sleep. I'm really trying to break into cybersecurity role. I'm thinking blue team first, of course. Awesome. Well, you're killing it, my friend. Now, you can see that it exhausted itself, but that's because I'm pretty sure those hashes are MD5. So let's try that instead. Instead of 900, let's try 0 for MD5 and see if we have any better luck. And, oh, we got one hash right here. You can see that hash, we cracked it, and the password is retail123. Let's grab that for our notes, and we'll drop back over to it. Let me see if I can make some more spaces here. I was able to crack one of the hashes with Hashcat. We'll drop the results in there, and that's for that F7 hash, which is going to be for this user account right here. The password is retail123, and I bet that's going to work for the login directory. And we'll go ahead and just say this. Valid credentials, user retail123, I think is what it was. Retail123. So we have that. We have a valid password, retail123, at least likely a valid password. I still want to test this stuff first, but let's go ahead and see if this is a valid password. User, retail123. Boom, and we just confirmed. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We do have this interesting web app right here, but can I log back out? I can. Log out, and that apparently breaks the web app. Okay, can I get back to the login screen, please? Am I missing something? Oh, okay, it's just something weird with something being cached here, maybe? What if I close this out and reopen it real quick? There we go. I don't think I could break a web app by logging back out. Let's test a few things here. So I'm going to go ahead and we can do a user, and I'm going to call it test for my password. And we'll jump over to this. I'm going to turn on queuing so we can intercept this request. I'm going to Control R to send this to replay. So then we can play around with this request. So if we do user, we get 302 found, which just goes to index.php, which must mean the login failed. What is it if it succeeds? Retail123. I think it's still a redirect. Oh, then we get a 200 response. Okay. So valid login is 200 response. Invalid login is a 302 redirect. Now, looking at our to-do list, there's a few things that we want to check. One thing we want to check is SQL injection. Let's go ahead and do that. An easy way to test SQL injection is do a single quote like that. If we see a 500 error or a SQL syntax error, then that's a good indicator that this is vulnerable to SQL injection. We'll hit send. And we did not get that. So we can go ahead and remove that. Maybe potentially just the password field is vulnerable. I doubt it, but we can try that as well. We will hit send, and that also fails. So we can go back over to our to-do list and mark off SQL injection. We can also try no SQL injection, although we know that's not going to be what it is. But with no SQL injection, we can do it this way. We'll do not equals, as in if the username does not equal user F, then log us in. I don't think it needs to be capital though. And I think, can I zoom in for you guys? I can. I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this a little bit better. We'll hit send, and we get an interesting error. So we get a stack trace. If we were doing a pen test, this would be an informational finding because it's actually revealing the full file path right here. We can see var www html inventory login.php. So that's interesting, but doesn't help us exploit anything. I'm going to ignore it for now. Maybe that will come back up later, and well, you know what? I probably shouldn't ignore that. That file path could be helpful to us. I'm going to grab a screenshot of just this response right here because we do have the full file path, and we'll drop that into our notes. I don't know where to put this. Maybe just right here. I'm going to drop some screenshots as we enumerate. Exactly, Zero Cool. That's what I'm thinking as well, but just for good methodology, I want to go through this as if we didn't know that, right? We have that hint already, but I want to do it as if we didn't have that hint and show everything. Now, we're not going to do common username password combinations because we do have access, but what I meant by that is you can always try admin, admin password, root to root. Occasionally, especially on an internal pen test, when I come to like a network interface or a network device, just using common username or password combinations will give me access to that device. But here we already have credentials, and username enumeration would be interesting. That's something you always want to check on a pen test, and that's if you get a different response for a valid user as opposed to an invalid user. So for a valid user, we get that, and for an invalid user, we get the same response. So there is no username enumeration going on there. So that's not something we would report to a client. So we can mark that off. Okay. Now that we do have valid credentials, this is what we're going to dive into next. But I'm looking over at the recording of this time, and this is going to end part 1 of this series of working through GCP hacking. Now, I know we didn't get actually into GCP, but that's okay. We're going to work through this machine slowly. Once we exploit the web app, we'll eventually get to GCP, but I demonstrated a lot of really proper methodology when it comes to enumeration. So whether you're studying for the PT1 or the OSCP or the PNPT or the PJPT or the CPTS or the EJPT, I'm sure I'm missing some certs, I think you'll find just this part of the video super helpful for your own journey. So hey, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.